Hi friends, hope you're doing well and staying safe and healthy. Welcome to my first design vlog where I am going to be sort of documenting my journey to UX design and talking about things, more personal things that I'm learning. And I will also have more like design subject matter videos, and it'll look something like this. And first one is coming at you next week, hopefully next Friday. We'll see how it goes. So some of you may know that I was pursuing a career in writing, and I wrote about that journey in a blog article that you can find below. If you don't want to read, basically I had a 4-year plan to write a bunch of books, which I did, but part of that plan included me being published, which I'm not yet. But the 4 years are over now and have been over since 2020. So I started looking at different career options, and UX design caught my interest. Thankfully, I have a friend who is a UX designer, so I got to ask him some questions. My cousin Esther, also connected me to a UX designer that she knows. And so I asked both Logan and Flora several questions, including what interests / excites you the most about your job, how did you get into the field, what are some things you wish you would have known before getting into UX design, anything you might have done differently, what does the typical day look like for you, and do you recommend any boot camps as I am looking into them. And their answers sold me. They were clearly passionate about design. And I'll just give you one example. So Flora answered my first question of what interests and excites you about your job with, I'm always in learning mode. I try to let go of any bias and learn as much as possible for most of the time. I get to learn something new about the users for every single project and solve it with the engineers. My power to bring aesthetics, functionality, and pleasurability together is really exciting to me. And I was like, yes, that sounds great. And she also said that the role is much more about how to think through a problem than the visuals. So someone who is a good problem solver will succeed and go much further than someone who is not. Also, it is much more about how you can work with the team that you're given. And all of this sounded really great to me. I love solving problems, and I do it for some people who may not want their problems to be solved. They just want to talk. But anyway, that's another video. But I was like, I don't know if I'd be good at it, like the actual being a UX designer part. And I also am not ready to fork over thousands of dollars for a boot camp when I really don't know much. Except that UX design sounds cool. Flora and Logan are both really cool. So that led me to DesignLab and their Foundations course, which is a 2-month course if you do it part-time and 1 month if you do it full-time. But it was perfect for me because it's geared towards people who have no background in design. So you can like poke your toes in the water, a toe in the water before taking a full dive. And in the Foundations course, I learned a lot. Like, I have paid for classes before, and this is one of the very first times in which I felt like I'm really getting my money's worth, because I knew nothing and now I know some things. And I wanted to keep learning more things because I applied and got into their UX Academy bootcamp. Yay. In the Foundations class, while the coursework was very good, I thought what really set the experience apart and made it great was my mentor. DesignLab will pair you with a mentor who grades your papers or all your assignments, or says, this thing needs iteration, try again. And my mentor was amazing. Her name is Judy, and she is the Director of Product Design and Research at Dow Jones, boss, and she was freaking awesome. She answered all my newbie questions with patience and provided really helpful information. I think the only thing that I felt was really missing in Design Lab's like foundations curriculum was more real life examples. But I understand it's only a 2-month course and you can only have so much information. So it didn't go into UX research, but it would mention some aspects of UX research and then like keep moving on. For example, there was mention of personas and how they can be used to anticipate user actions. And I was like, what is personas and what does that have to do with designing something? And Judy explained that a persona represents an archetype of users, and your design team might have at least a few different personas, and they'll tailor it to a project. So the example she gave was from her workplace, and one persona is a man who is in his 60s and he might be more into paper and only comes to the website for very specific things. And so he'll use the search bar. But the design team wants to know, how does he use the search bar? Why? And if there are certain types of information that would be more helpful to him. Another persona, or an archetype of a user, would be someone who's been using the site often but has his own ways of navigating and saving the articles. But the design team wants to know, what are some of those ways that he saves? How can we optimize the design to best serve this type of user? Of course, after she gave me those examples, I was like, ding, I understand now. But I will say, it wasn't all like rainbows and butterflies, because you are learning a new skill and lots of new information. And so for me, the part that I was most concerned about was some of the design tools, so like Sketch and Figma and Photoshop. And there are a lot of assignments where you had to reproduce websites and apps. It was not my favorite thing, but I understand why we had to do it, because first you're developing an eye for what works and an eye for details. A lot of times I would miss like a drop shadow on a little form field, and my mentor would point it out and say, yeah, these things will come with practice. And so Design Lab will make you practice. And you're getting practice with your tools, so the more you use it, the faster and more efficient you'll become. And I'm proud to say that I've been killing the wireframes for this week's boot camp. Yeah. And I think in learning any craft, it's about finding your process, right? Like whatever helps you get what you need to done. So for me, I learned that I need like epic gaming music, or like super up-tempo K-pop when I'm developing wireframes or like completing any assignments that requires just a long time in front of the screen. And it's very similar to how I needed like movie soundtracks for when I was writing my stories. So I would listen to like Pirates of the Caribbean, great, or Avatar: The Last Airbender soundtracks. Yeah, and it really affected my productivity, but I had to discover that. And I think that's an important part of like figuring out how you learn and how you do stuff in a way that works best for you. If you have any things that keep you productive and want to share that, please do in the comments below. So shout out to Judy, my mentor, who made my foundations experience awesome. Shout out to Design Lab for getting me started. And of course, shout out to Logan and Flora, who first got me hooked. And of course, cousin E, who connected me to Flora. So one thing that I didn't expect going into learning about UX design is that I would learn about myself and that there would be some life application. So one of the first things Design Lab teaches is that design doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs ready to be discussed. And quality can come later, and even that can and probably should be continuously improved. And I think that that's something we can apply to our lives, right? Like in general. I feel like in my experience, people have just always expected something to be perfect, or you try it and you do it and it is accomplished. Well, that's not really how life works. First, you have to practice a lot. First, you have to get a lot of bad drafts out when writing a story. It's all kind of a journey, and even when you think you have a final draft or a final product, like, it's not really over. Things could still change, and maybe they should, and continuously adapt and learn and grow, just like you. I think too, there's this idea in our culture of like, you're not allowed to make mistakes, or you should be at this point at this age and have this many whatevers, you know? But the reality is you will make mistakes. Sometimes you will have bad ideas. For me, I have lots of bad ideas, and that's just how it is. And eventually you'll have some good ideas sometimes, hopefully. So, you know, hashtag respect your journey. I've also learned that design is about leaning into the pain points in life. Like if something bothers me or someone hurts my feelings or something, like usually I'm just like, whatever, move on, it doesn't matter. But as a UX designer, it's your job to find out why something is frustrating or not working. And you shouldn't move on, because it is opportunity to make a design better. As I was planning to put together next week's video on some user interface principles, I decided to tackle YouTube's user interface, because YouTube's like algorithm, like the suggestion video algorithm, is really weird. I rarely click on anything that's suggested to me. And like I've mentioned it before, and like my husband was like, yeah, it is weird, but like of course we just moved on. But now, as an aspiring UX designer, I can stop and say, why is it weird to me? Why don't I like it? What would make it better? And my frustrations actually matter when it comes to using a product. And that applies to my life in general. And so maybe instead of just moving on from whatever's frustrating me, I can stop and ask why. How can I make this situation better for myself and maybe for others, you know? So, whew, yeah, life lessons. Probably more lessons to come. And that's why this is just design vlog number 1. Do you have any thoughts, comments, questions about that? Write them below. Of course, we have to end this video with a random fun fact. So, I'm very excited about this random fun fact. But let's start with some context, okay? So I love coffee, tea, drinking lots of water throughout the day, which means that I have to pee a lot throughout the day. Now, did you know that wood frogs can hold their pee for up to 8 months? 8 months! That's like majority of the year. Wow. So these wood frogs are mostly found in Alaska and the northwest of the US, and they've adapted to the colder climates by freezing over the winter. When I read this, I was like, so do they not pee because they're frozen? Actually, it gets even more exciting, guys. Their frog bodies recycle the urea, which is the waste in urine, into nitrogen, which doesn't warm up their bodies. Instead, the urea protects the cells and tissues of their little frog bodies. Even as their hearts, brains, and bloodstream stop. Some have called the frog pee a type of antifreeze, but most zoologists will be like, no. Because the frogs are completely frozen, and they would be called dead if they were human. So it's not antifreeze. It's just a really cool mechanism that protects the frog while frozen. Hibernation is common, but wood frogs don't just sleep. They freeze solid. And once temperatures drop, they thaw and come back to life and hop around like nothing ever happened.
The cold never bothered me anyway.
Isn't that amazing? Wow. That's all for today. Okay, have a wonderful day. Bye!